It has been a difficult week for New York's Jewish community. The despicable demonstrations outside the Nova exhibit, the vandalism of the homes and threats against the director and board members of the Brooklyn Museum, and the call by protesters for Zionists on the subway to identify themselves all remind us that though encampments on some university quads may have been dismantled as students break for the summer, anti-Semitism does not take such a vacation. Meanwhile, northern Israel, some of it burning, has endured a constant Hezbollah bombardment. Achenu kol Beit Yisrael, our family, the whole house of Israel who are in distress or in captivity, who abide either on the sea or on dry land. May the All-Present have mercy on them and take them out from narrowness to expanse, and from darkness to light, and from oppression to redemption, now, swiftly, and soon. This prayer, dating back at least to the medieval period, is our tradition's plea for the release of those held captive or those in distress. Jews have been offering it for centuries, and certainly for the last 8 months, perhaps for themselves, but primarily, of course, for the hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. It begins by noting that we Jews are all one family, wherever we live, achim, brethren. For so many of us, the challenges of this past year have reminded us of that. And in particular for diaspora Jews, the year has strengthened our connection to our people in the land of Israel, who constitute half of world Jewry. And it has reaffirmed our commitment to the state of Israel as a source of strength and security for Jews wherever we live. And we can hold such a commitment and at the same time hold compassion for the Palestinian people too. Many of us have family in Israel. More of us have friends in Israel. All of us have representation in Israel of the values we hold dear through the Israel movement for reform and progressive Judaism, whose 54 congregations around the country embrace an egalitarian, open vision of Jewish life that continues to resonate with increasing numbers of Israelis, particularly as the government has shifted rightward toward a narrow fundamentalism. And that is why, for many decades, Temple Emanu-El has supported the Israel movement for reform and progressive Judaism through your contributions to our philanthropic fund. The IMPJ, as it is called, not only supports its own synagogue communities, but it advocates and litigates to release religious life from the grip of the ultra-Orthodox Rabbanut for the benefit of all Israelis. It was involved in last year's protests against the effort to undermine the courts. And since October 7th, its congregations and clergy have taken up frontline positions in the care of so many deeply and tragically impacted by Hamas's brutal assault, an effort that will continue for a long time to come. Which is why this past year, our philanthropic committee directed $250,000 to the work of the IMPJ, the single largest congregational gift to our Israel movement in its history. What inspired that gift was our Temple Solidarity Mission's visit to the IMPJ headquarters in January, where we learned about the movement's initiatives at this critical and painful time. There we met with Anna Kislanski, the CEO of the Israel Reform Movement, an experienced educator who spent the past decade as IMPJ Deputy Director General. Anna oversaw the congregational and educational arms of the Reform movement in Israel and worked to support the growing network of Reform congregations in Israel, which has doubled under her watch. Prior to her service with our Israel movement, she worked for the Jewish Agency for Israel and at the College of Management in Israel. She has degrees in Middle Eastern Studies and Educational Counseling, and she and her husband Arthur live with their 3 children in Evan Yehuda. She is here with her colleague and our congregation's dear friend, David Bernstein. Now would you please welcome to our pulpit, Anna Kislanski.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Once upon a time, a man was on his way to an important meeting in Tel Aviv and couldn't find a parking space. He searched and was already running late to the important meeting. In despair, he stopped the vehicle and looked up at the skies, pleading and praying, God, Elohim, I know that sometimes I do wrong, and I also know I'm asking you for quite a bit. But I need your help here. Help me find a parking space. Not a moment goes by. The man lowers his eyes back to the road, and there is a parking lot right next to him. The guy looks back up at the skies and exclaims, God, no need. I found one myself. And if you speak Hebrew, it's Elohim en tzorech, הסתדרתי לבד. This joke very much characterizes the secular, Israeli, cynical view of Tel Aviv, the first Hebrew city. But these days, Tel Aviv, the city that never stops, bears a pain that no healthy secular cynicism can heal. Lately, we need prayers more than ever, and not only in Tel Aviv. The late poet Yehuda Amichai wrote many years ago the poem, Gods change, prayers remain forever. I say with perfect faith that prayers preceded God. Prayers created God. God created human. And human creates prayers that create God, who creates human. In his poetry, Amichai expresses the human need to pray and the creation of prayers by humans as an ancient existential need. We feel this need every day in our congregations that are filled with men and women praying in the new prayers written by the rabbis and leaders of the Israeli Reform movement. And in the synagogue of the Israeli street, in Hostages Square in Tel Aviv, where we have been leading Havdalah services since October 7th, attended by hundreds of Israelis. 2 weeks ago, the Israeli Reform movement held a large gathering. We started preparing for this biennial event a long time ago. We hoped that by the end of May 2024, the hostages, evacuees, reservists, and IDF soldiers would return home, and we would be able to gather the fragments, conduct a social cheshbon nefesh, introspection, and work on healing Israeli society. This, unfortunately, has not yet happened. We are in the midst of a terrible and exhausting battle. The hostages suffer in dark tunnels. The evacuees have not yet returned to their homes, and many others have been lost and are no longer with us. And yet, deep down, we all long for tomorrow, and therefore, the gathering that we held was marked by hope. As a leading social and religious movement, we are not waiting for the day after idly, but have set significant goals for rebuilding and healing Israeli society. In this week's Torah portion, Naso, we learn that the 12 tribal leaders, in coordination, but apparently to Moses' great surprise, bring special gifts to the tabernacle. Alongside the 6 carts brought by the leaders of the 12 tribes together, each leader brought an additional gift containing silver utensils, a bowl and a basin, a gold ladle with incense, and animals for sacrifice, exactly the same gift for each leader. And the Lord said unto Moses, They shall present their offering, each prince on his day, for the dedication of the altar. According to God's instruction, each leader was given the honor to give their gift on a separate day. And so for 12 days, each leader brought their gift, exactly the same gift that their peers brought. And at the end, a numerical summary of all the gifts together. Why? The apparent reason is precisely the value of equality among all the tribes of Israel. Amid the tensions, jealousies, rivalries, and divisions among the different tribes, with all their diversity between the sons of Leah and the sons of Rachel, between the children of the mistresses and the children of the maidservants, they are all equal. One people of Israel. All the tribal leaders bring expensive gifts and sacrifices, but instead of each leader trying to outdo the other leaders, they all bring the exact same thing. We, as the Reform movement in Israel, certainly have much to say about situations of equality and inequality in Israeli society. First, about the equality that should exist between the center and the periphery in Israel these days. As long as the residents of the north, next to the Lebanese border, and south, next to the border with Gaza, cannot return to their homes, we must recognize that there is a real danger, not only to their security, but also that a real and growing rift will be created between the center and the periphery of the country. We cannot overlook the fact that parts of us are suffering so much and cannot return to their homes. In the last decade, we have doubled the number of Reform congregations in Israel with an emphasis on establishing congregations in the periphery and not only in the center of the country. Therefore, our role as a movement is to continue and expand our activities in the envelope of Israel, strengthen our congregations in Sha'ar HaNegev, the gate to the Negev, Mateh Asher in the Western Galilee, and Kiryat Shmona in the Upper Galilee, communities that have been evacuated from their places and whose members are scattered across the country, and to establish new congregations and additional activities in the south and north of the country when the time comes. Secondly, about the equality between Jews and Arabs. We woke up on October 8th to a reality where parts of Israeli society suspected and criticized the Arab citizens of Israel. People were defamed and silenced. Some lost their jobs. As a liberal and religious movement that has engraved on its banner the fight against racism and believes that we were all created B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, we must believe that we have a shared good together. The Hamas attack harmed all the residents of Israel, including Israeli Arabs, and therefore this year the movement, together with our humanitarian aid fund, Bekavod, and the Israel Religious Action Center, our public and legal arm, has established programs for a shared society and encourages congregations to increase their activities in this area. In contrast to the value of equality so beautifully demonstrated in the portion, there is also the commandment in the portion to expel the impure and the lepers from the camp. In the ancient world, there was no harsher punishment than isolation and removal from the camp. Today, despite the social networks and escapism, we again find ourselves isolated from the rest of the world. We Israelis are experiencing a heavy sense of alienation, isolation, and loneliness that goes with us, weighing down on our souls and impairing our ability to cope with the war and loss. But there are some moments of comfort, particularly when you, our brothers and sisters from around the world, come on solidarity missions to be with us. We sing together, cry together, pray in the hosted square, and together shout out, "Bring them home, now, achshav." There are no words to express my gratitude to your congregation, Temple Emanu-El, for standing by us. You came to be with us in the first months of the war. We prayed together, cried together, and held a meaningful dialogue. You've supported our movement with generosity, which allowed us to provide resources to our congregations and rabbis who served as a support and helped so many evacuees, soldiers, and families. With the understanding and awareness that the war which broke out following the Hamas attack on October 7th affects the Jewish diaspora, no less than it affects the residents of the State of Israel, the Reform movement in Israel is focusing on strengthening the connection between our congregations and congregations in the diaspora. In new programs and in fostering meaningful and respectful dialogue between Reform Jews of all ages in Israel and around the world. All of Israel are responsible for one another, and in these moments of mutual responsibility between Jews in Israel and Jews around the world, there is a great strength and great blessing. In the Nassau portion, the priestly blessing is first mentioned, ending with the words, "V'yasem lecha shalom." May the Lord give you peace. May peace come upon us soon, and let us say, Amen. Toda rabba.